Hi, Greg. I'm Jonathan Herps, founder and CEO of Scale Up Growth Partners. As you know, I'm running a series of blogs, podcasts, I suppose, on stories of scaling up, where we chat with owners, MDs, CEOs, and business leaders from scaling up companies. It centers around your entrepreneurial journey and so far, and your aspiration for your company and yourself going forward. So today we're speaking with Greg Parfitt, who's CEO at Orange Hire. And thank you, Greg, and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
So I might just jump straight into it. What do you do? What do you do, and what does Orange Hire do?
So, I'm the CEO at Orange Hire, and we run a rental business, and we have two key verticals, which are traffic and earth moving and compaction gear. We service construction, but more specifically civil construction. But local government, anything that really involves either keeping people safe through separating workers and traffic, and or really anything that's involved with digging and or compacting dirt.
Okay. And where are you? We're on
the eastern seaboard of Australia, so we've got hub branches along the eastern seaboard, and we sort of shift from the coastal network into inland as well.
And do you provide, what do you do? Do you provide machinery? Do you provide
dry hire equipment?
Okay.
And then also, quite active in used equipment sales as well. So trying to keep the fleet young, so we do churn out our equipment quite quickly.
Okay. How long have you been involved with the business, and how long?
I've been involved with the business for about 3.5 years now, and the business has been running for, probably about 13 years.
Okay. And your background before you joined?
So I did a long stint in a business, started off in a business called National Hire, which is a small private business. We in hire as well, more broad product lines. And then through various maneuvers, we ended up floating the business, relatively small float. Then we got basically a major shareholding took place through Westrac, which is owned by the Seven Group. And then with those guys, we privatised again. And then with partners from America, Carlisle private equity guys, we ended up buying Coates, which was probably at that time about 3.5 times our size, and then put those businesses together, took the Coates brand forward. And then I had numerous jobs sort of in the executive team there, running, first of all, New South Wales, and then into New South Wales and Victoria. And then I went into a head office role, which was more kind of corporate at first, and then ultimately ended up running the sales teams across the country for Coates. So that was sort of almost a 30-year journey. I did a year outside in an automotive business, part of a global firm from Inchcape. I ran a business in Australia called Auto Nexus, which was mostly around distribution and some upfit of vehicles and parts, etc. And then, the Joyces who owned Orange at the time, reached out and ended up at Orange Hire.
Right. And I'll make a comment because Greg and I spoke a bit earlier, but the Joyces are a phenomenal business building family. They founded and then sold J-Bro, and Orange Hire was part of their ongoing strategy. So interesting, Greg, you've now been through, what, is it 2 or 3 private equity investors coming into companies you've been in, and then sales of 2 of them. It's an interesting experience.
Yes, I mean, I think when we sat there in Coates in the beginning, or in National Hire when we got private equity partners, a lot of nervousness around just the reputation of those guys. I think at the end of the day, if you get the right partners, that you ultimately do need to buy into the business strategy, I think, because you need that alignment from owners all the way through. But, they're pretty pure in their approach in that they are interested in making money. Most of them, as I said, will work out that people and customers will make you money. And it's been good learnings. They pick stuff up quickly, and I think they're very dexterous, so to speak, around the way they deal with businesses. And, what has probably amazed me is the horsepower they bring, and then also just the speed they get it. And,
so you've got private equity owners now. Is that right? Yeah. How is that different to operating with a family board, as an example, as you had before?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, and not a lot has changed. I mean, I think we got very lucky, and I think the Joyces did sort of support the management in their choice as well of the partners they put us with. And I think for us, and the key reason I went, came across to join Orange and to work with the Joyces was around the absolute commitment to understanding the importance of their people and driving a lot of engagement, a lot of measuring engagement, and making that probably the core, foundation of the business. And then added right next to that is that focus on customer experience and really measuring Net Promoter Score, looking at every comment from every customer right at the top. And our new owners, Arcadia Capital, both have history with myself and the CFO from that. They were two guys who worked with Carlisle inside coach, so they kind of knew us. But also really get that concept of, sure, we're here to make money, but, you really need to get your people fired up and wanting to give discretional effort. And you'll drive good customer experience off that, and you'll drive growth and profit from that ultimately. Mm-hmm. So having the right guys, and these guys think a lot like the Joyces, and that was the foundation of this business, I guess.
It's interesting that the Joyces, you would have been in the J-Grow offices, and I'm a scaling up coach, and they implemented so much of what I coach. Even into, I'm going to jump to my next question, because it's an interesting experience when you go into J-Grow. There's dashboards everywhere. Everybody knows what's going on. You go up into the boardroom, and there's a life-size cutout picture of a tradesman. I've forgotten his name now. In all their decisions about service, they refer to this core customer as we describe it. So tell me, who is your core customer? Who's your the perfect customer for you?
Well, I mean, the Joyces really used that model quite well, and we had a guy called Steve, and also had our cutouts and posters with Steve on it. It's probably evolved a little bit. We probably see ourselves, into a slightly broader customer base. We've probably got 4 or 5 key customers, but for us, it's really starting with the tier 1 builders in a lot of our traffic product. Those guys are obviously looking for safety, number one, and pretty strong procurement processes running through the type of the bigger projects as well. So you kind of are getting squeezed both on quality and price, but you are getting really good duration and low operating costs out of those guys. So that's the one group, and then it kind of cascades down to tier 4 or 5 small business owners in the civil space, and those guys are really their own gear, most of them. So they own their own gear. They're looking to supplement their fleets. They're really looking for businesses that can produce quality equipment and be super responsive to their needs. It's all about pace. So we've got a kind of a bit of a broader customer base. We'll focus these days, but very similar thing to the Joyces, and really understanding what are these guys really looking for, and trying to differentiate on the back of that. Okay, and like the Joyces, as I said, really living off feedback from our customers. Yeah, to drive our direction of the business.
Great, thank you. So we've all been through the pandemic. What are some of the things that you did in the pandemic that now remain in your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously flexibility, and wherever we could, and really a lot of our branches, really, it was only the mechanical staff that we couldn't obviously work remotely, and other teams, if it suited them, people were able to work remotely very quickly. And like most businesses, we were surprised at kind of how well it worked. I didn't realise how well we were set up for it, really. So and that remains. So we have quite a bit of flexibility in the branches where people choose it. In our head office, we certainly have flexibility. And as I mentioned before, Jonathan, there's 25 odd people in the office. I'm in when everyone's here, but today I'm on my own. So we have one day with everyone in, and then from there people make a choice of a second day, etc. I certainly and my team like to get together once a week face to face. And we just try and work to what people require. I mean, there is an office still, so if you do want to come, you're welcome. But there's no requirement that you're here every day. And we've certainly seen people, gain quality of life on the back of it. I think, most people have put it into, hopefully, into themselves and their families, more than just ending up doing that extra bit of work at the end of the day, which still happens. But so some good gains there. The other thing we did, I think, which helped us, Jonathan, was to we started having a week. People were pretty spooked at the start of COVID, and we started to have a weekly catch up with every person in the business. A Zoom and invited, got the guys to stop work. And initially, it was really around, we're all okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to look after each other, and we sort of made a commitment that if part of the business had to shut down, the rest of it, and we couldn't really afford wages, we would all take a hit, and regardless of what the employment laws said, we were going to really sit this out together and do everything to protect every job and every family, as opposed to look after as opposed to a group of us might suffer. So we got a very central theme going, and I think that has stuck in our culture that we're all in this together always, and that communication. So we started off with that weekly. The weekly is now gone to fortnightly, but we are talking to the whole business directly. And that was only something you did when you traveled to each branch before and you got your messages. It just wasn't something you thought about. And so I think it's brought us together, and it's probably sped up the evolution, I guess, of our culture in a way. So two really useful things coming out of it.
Have you documented that really important value formally into the values, or is it just in behind?
Well, I guess, our values are, the first one is around passionate people. I guess it sits in there and the team focus, but really that, very inclusive, supporting environment. So I guess it is there anyway. It's just leveraging that. And it was, I guess, bringing it to life in a way that got people comfortable. I think also people realized that we were not just talking about it.
Living up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what does the future look like for the business, and what challenges do you see coming down the pipeline at you?
Yeah, I think, the challenges for us are probably the global challenges that we're all facing. I think, having a highly engaged workforce and retaining them is probably number one, both opportunity and challenge at the moment in the retention space. So it's become even more important. And we focus, as I said, we continue to work in that space. We got recognised recently through one of the Australian Financial Review pieces of work on the boss, and into the finalists there. And I think
let's expand that. You got recognised as employer of choice to work for, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, number two. We got second in the category of transport, property, and construction. Right. So we were pretty proud of it for a little business like ours. It was a pretty good result. But I think you saw out of that too, because they did a different survey on our staff again, which made up 50% of the kind of the marking. And there's plenty to be done still. And I think you just got to keep trying to work on it. And when you do go to those sorts of awards, you hear what other people are doing, and so that remains like an absolute fundamental focus of our business. And attached to that, which is not just engagement, but it's obviously linked, is wellness. Sort of become more relevant. I think there's probably ultimately more pressure in people's lives. In particular, we're starting cost of living coming through now, and all those sorts of things that we try to want to get people into their best frame of mind, I guess, and support that.
Congratulations. It's interesting. One of my clients at the upper end is a company called Insight, and they're number 15 in Australia, best place to work overall. And they're also ranked highly in New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, and the Philippines, I think. And it's fascinating how that focus of looking after, it's not necessarily looking after the staff, but the focus on the team, how it lifts the whole company.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're in the service industry, and I think, unless you're making automated manufacturing, it's any business, you need people make a choice every time they do something. how they turn up, the mood they turn up into, just the effort they put into, and the amount of thinking that goes into what they're doing, the amount of their own creativity. And, so I think, if you want to maximize that, and it's pretty awesome when you get close to it, that, I think every business, should be focused there first and foremost.
Agreed. Yeah, the right people doing the right things, everything else follows.
Yeah, and we've tried to do quite a bit of work. You ask your sort of priorities around leadership skills, in particular around coaching is an area we've been working in. And one of a consultant that we were having a chat to recently, sort of his view was like, coaching is the superpower of leaders. And I think for us, we really sort of value that space as well, and try and to get away from, and we all struggle with it, from sort of telling and try to ask and get people to think for themselves, and harness the energy and I guess the the capacity.
Yeah, it's interesting. People sometimes ask me what book I recommend the most. The book that I give away the most is a book called Legacy by James Kerr, and it's he documented the values of the All Blacks, and it's all about the legacy the leaders leave and how that grows for the organisation. He was the one that documented the always sweep out the sheds as an example.
Incredible, powerful metaphor and reality for those guys, but definitely a different type of leadership.
Yeah, doesn't quite fit with my Barrel Blacks under-8s team that I coach, but that's another story. Tell me, when you think about the word successful, who do you think about? Who would you put out there?
It's a good question. I mean, it could be so many people depending on what they're trying to do and what they want. I think I like a lot of sport, and so you see people at the pinnacle there winning, and how they've got themselves. And then I guess if I look at business, it's probably people who've been able to develop sustainable cultures where people are really thriving. And I think in business, the opportunities, and obviously when you're thriving, you're making money, but the opportunities to really impact positively on people's lives, And so when you see businesses that are people that have started enterprises that have been able to do that, and all stakeholders are winning and they've got good social responsibility, I guess that's in the business sense, that's what success looks like for me.
It's interesting. This is one of the really interesting questions I asked, and I got one of the most interesting answers yesterday. The CEO I was speaking to said Tom Cruise. I initially went, Tom Cruise? And then he said, look, he's in his 60s, he's been at this thing for 45 years. He's got these multiple franchises that essentially employ so many people. And when I started thinking about it, it was a really good example, like a very left field example from what I didn't expect, but it was it's about building communities that drive together, forward together. So it was an interesting question. Business books, podcasts, blogs, biographies of leaders. Are there any that stick out to you that you'd recommend?
I can't say there would be. I mean, I tend to jump around a bit with whatever grabs my fancy at the time. Certainly, probably more at the moment, sort of reading a bit more around stuff from Simon Sinek and sort of Brené Brown sort of stuff, just as we get into this wellness era. And then also very interested in as I said, in stuff around coaching and that whole mindset change and I guess that learning mindset and trying to embed that in an organization and in people and get them to start focusing. So any kind of little tools around there. So I think sort of learning that people have got definitely short attention spans. So try and find little grabs of things that really have some power in them and share them. And it's quite broad.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the things I recommend with my clients is that in their quarterly cadence, that all leaders' KPIs are that every member of their team must be coached on a quarterly basis. And we build in a bit of a template, not detailed, but, and I'll send this through to you, some questions to help the leaders actually, coach their team members. And we, across the board, we benchmark the team members based on their first on values, how they live the values of the company, and then how productive they are in their function based on their KPIs. But the leaders' KPIs include this, coaching and also development plans for all their team. If they don't have those in place in a good way, it's not a markdown, but it's something for the CEO to actually coach the leaders on. And we build that into the quarterly rhythm as one of the major priorities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think having those conversations and getting good at coaching, does ultimately, well, it certainly enables the leaders to get the best out of their people if they're able to learn that.
Absolutely. And knowing what the people want, where do they see their future, and what do they, and therefore building training around that and everything else that comes with it. So it's a superpower for the company to get it right. And
I think I think with you guys with the scaling up, a fair amount of that stuff is around cadence as well. And I noticed with the Joyces, making sure not only were you having the conversations, but it was regular.
Yeah, absolutely.
And committed. I think that's another powerful part of it, is making sure that you make the time always.
And don't compromise on it. Yeah. It's if you get those rhythms, it's like your fortnightly all hands call. It's a huge thing. It's a great way of gathering information from them, from the front line, and also to impart that information.
Yeah,
agreed. Last question: any last piece of advice or parting words you'd give to a new CEO?
Sorry, I didn't get the back part of that.
Any parting words or advice, or one piece of advice you'd give to a new CEO?
Well, I think, if we've spoken about a lot of the stuff, but maybe also, don't take yourself too seriously, I guess, would be it. And you're not going to be right all the time, and you will make mistakes, I guess. That's just the way it is. So I guess be kind to yourself, really, ultimately.
That's a good piece of advice, because we do make mistakes and we've got to move on from them. I agree.
Yeah.
Greg, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.